About 90% of shrimp consumed in the United States is imported. Because much imported seafood is farm-raised in confined conditions, drugs are used to prevent or treat disease and increase survival rates, and residues of some of these drugs can cause cancer or allergic reactions or contribute to antibiotic resistance. Among different kinds of seafood, shrimp have had the highest frequency of veterinary drug violations, primarily for nitrofurans and chloramphenicol. The United States banned chloramphenicol 35 years ago due to a link with a rare and often fatal disease called aplastic anemia. Nitrofurans are also dangerous because of their potential cancer-causing properties, so their use in animals produced for human consumption is similarly banned in Europe and the United States. For something as potentially dangerous as chloramphenicol, governments around the world have established zero-tolerance policies, which means that no residues in food are permissible. However, traces of chloramphenicol have been detected in shrimp. Unlike most of the animals we eat, who have multiple organs for drug excretion, shrimp possess only one, which may allow more antibiotics to build up in them, but you don't know until you put it to the test. There have been 4 studies published on the presence of banned drugs in retail U.S. shrimp. One found that 92% of imported farm-raised shrimp tested positive for at least one drug that is banned for use in the United States. Another of just 6 shrimp from stores in Arizona and California found drugs in 2 of them. The third tested dozens purchased in Louisiana from many of our main shrimp importers, and 70% tested positive for the zero-tolerance carcinogenic nitrofurantoin. Of all the countries, Vietnam appeared to be sending us shrimp with the most types of antibiotic residues. The 100% positives in Bangladesh and Ecuador were based on just a single positive sample, 1 out of 1 for both countries. The fourth, however, found no antibiotic residues. Unfortunately, only a small fraction of imports are tested by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, and therefore the potential for shipments with antibiotic-tainted shrimp to slip through the cracks remains. And they're mostly from Asia, which has been identified as posing a very significant risk to the global burden of antibiotic resistance. Stocking densities on shrimp farms are often very high, which concentrates bacteria and raises stress levels in the animals, which increases their susceptibility to infection, leading to outbreaks that kill like 1 billion shrimp at a time. Shrimp don't respond to vaccination, so to combat disease, farmers employ a range of chemicals, the residues of which can end up in the final product we may eat. Even in more traditional systems where human and animal waste is dumped into shrimp ponds, the antibiotics that end up in the manure end up just increasing overall antibiotic exposure. Aside from the potential for fostering antibiotic resistance, consuming antibiotic residues can have a direct toxic effect, and the constant traces of antibiotics can also disrupt the human microbiome, as has been demonstrated. The consumption of shrimp containing potentially unsafe levels of antibiotics from aquaculture, shrimp farming, is a global concern due to the overuse of antibiotics. There's clearly an urgent need for governments to regulate the use of antibiotics in crustacean production. In 2001, chloramphenicol was detected in shrimp imported into Europe from Asia, triggering a food scandal, and the regulatory response spilled over to other major seafood importing countries, including the United States. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration started testing, and every year has rejected shrimp due to the presence of antimicrobial drugs, the most contaminated of all tested seafood products. That shows the system is working, right? Well, only a small amount of imported seafood is actually inspected. How small? For shrimp, about 4 samples out of every 10 million pounds of shrimp are tested. So assuming there are about 25 shrimp in a pound, that's like 1 sample tested for every 60 million shrimp. Of course, they come in big batches, yet the FDA only tests about 0.1% of the million annual shipments that come in every year. Based on this level of testing, seafood shipments from a foreign processing facility would have a roughly 1 in 1,000 chance of being selected by the FDA for drug residue testing. Is that because positive findings are so rare? No. About every 1 in every 10 shipments of shrimp tested turns up contaminated with unsafe drug residues. So that means like 100 shipments of the other 999 that weren't tested may also be contaminated, yet they can go straight to restaurants or grocery stores. And we only test for a few drugs. Europe, Japan, and Canada are picking up 7 to 10 different drugs, whereas we only look for 2. So we're likely missing the wider range of drugs picked up by other countries. Why doesn't the FDA test more? According to FDA officials, they don't have the resources to test more. OK, said the GAO, which is the congressional watchdog, how about forcing the countries that are sending the shrimp to test for drugs before they ship them here? Let them pay for it. That's what Europe does. Well, the FDA decided not to pursue such agreements with other countries to require them to test seafood exported to the United States for unsafe drug residues, as Europe does. Why not? They didn't think some of the countries that send us shrimp might be able to, because they lack the laboratory infrastructure and capabilities needed to test for the drugs of concern to the FDA. I'm reminded of an outbreak investigation of salmonella linked to shrimp, where the investigators had to explain to the exporters that they probably shouldn't be scooping up shrimp off the floor. But wait, countries exporting to Europe are able to comply, so what ends up happening is that the United States may still be a market for at least some seafood that did not meet the safety standards of Europe. As a result, shrimp that cannot be shipped to European countries because of concerns about violative drug residues may be shipped to the United States no problem. It's like the use of some coloring agents used to disguise shrimp diseases, approved in the United States but prohibited elsewhere due to concerns about causing ADHD symptoms in children. Countries know they can always send products here, even if they do use drugs they aren't supposed to. There's only a 1 in 1,000 chance we'll even check.